government in Mexico, and they just passed a reform law that said they're going to pay, 49 cents an hour, because that's the law now. So imagine what those workers are going to go through, and you're going to have another 11 million or 6 million that are going to come to this country. Now, what we hear from the Senate, Democrats and Republicans, they're talking about they're going to suavecito this whole question of the guest worker program. And we know damn well that what they're going to do, and I was once a deputy labor commissioner for the state of California, and if you ask me if they really enforce the law, and they have enough staff to enforce the law, and we hear now that, oh, we're going to take care and remedy the whole guest worker program by making sure that the law is in place, and that's BS, because the bottom line, they're not going to be able to hire tens of thousands of people to enforce the guest worker program, that they're going to have it go into place, when we know that the bargaining deal that's happening is corporate-minded. The corporations want to continue this enslavement of the guest worker.
As hard as we did, like you said, that was reminiscent in 2006, right? But it takes these conversations, those comments to help inform the organizing, right? To build, right, the base, to be able to talk about that in a much larger way, to have a more meaningful impact, right? And the only way we're going to do that is if we get out and organize. And so, you know, when the recess comes after Cesar Chavez Day, right, the Easter recess, right, they're here for an extended amount of time in district. And that is a huge opportunity for us to take these conversations, have that inform the organizing that will happen there, right, and allow us to go into the community to educate, to empower, to agitate folks, right, to action, to whatever it is that you all decide here locally. I think the organizing that happens locally here is what's going to ultimately push the national conversation. And I think it starts, right, with Cesar Chavez recess, right, what we have here. And then I think it's a build-up towards May Day. May Day has traditionally, historically, right, been a huge mobilization day for labor for years. But I think more so there's a huge opportunity to build bridges around communities labor hasn't traditionally been engaged with, right? And to outwardly reach out to other, you know, community organizations that labor in and of itself just has not reached out to in the past. And so there's a large opportunity around this immigration fight, right, to kind of envision what exactly it is that's being talked about and to have that help inform the organizing moving forward. And so there'll be opportunities when the strategy is being rolled out right now. There's an executive council meeting in Orlando where these conversations are continuing to happen, right? But again, it happens here locally, right, with the San Francisco Labor Council, right, with the Bay Area region.
My name is Al Rojas. I'm from Sacramento and with the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement. Well, in 2008, our Sacramento chapter initiated and submitted a resolution on immigration reform that was fair and just at the National Convention. And the delegates went over the resolution. It was adopted unanimously, and it was passed. And basically, there are 6 or 7 major points about, you know, what we were supporting as far as that legislation. Thereafter, in 2010, there's other brothers, I think from the Bay Area here, that submitted almost exactly the same resolution and adopted again. And it was adopted by the National Convention of the Labor Council of Latin American Advancement, which is the largest Latino constituency group of many unions, and that being the AFL-CIO Federation and the SEIU Change to Win, you know, affiliate, and other affiliates too.
And now what's happening?
Well, it looks like the AFL-CIO has taken the position of instead of labor immigration reform as it's known, what they've done is now they've gone along with the corporate effort, and Obama's leading the charge. And basically, the labor has dropped the ball and gone with the politicians instead of labor as it relates to what type of immigration reform. So we're very concerned because, in essence, what messages are they sending to the community? When we went in behalf of, you know, the community and the labor organizations and members to pass this resolution at the level of labor, but now we have the labor councils, and in our case in Sacramento, whose secretary is coming back saying, you have to sign off on the principles, which is basically all it is vague language. does not talk about the specifics of penalizing and criminalizing and having to, serve pain and more pain on the people who are, affected. And then the other is, more importantly, there's no one talking to the immigrant community. The immigrant community has basically been shoved aside, and every time somebody speaks up, that they're concerned about E-Verify, ESCOM, they're concerned about paying fines and paying back taxes and to the back of the line. That's not just immigration reform. In essence, they're not even talking about an economic development program in Mexico to take care of some of the issues of why people come here. And it's economics. So you have, at the same time, our government, who supplies the Mexican government with billions of dollars to fight the so-called drug war. Well, people go to drugs because when your government is paying 48 to 38 cents an hour now, there's no way they're going to subsist. But it's a corporate, agenda, because the Democrats or the Republicans depend on, the corporations. It's no longer about the people at the bottom and people at the grassroots and the members. It's more so who they're paying attention to, and it's the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. As much as we can tell, there's been other industries aside from, in the last several years, agriculture workers, but the greater number happens to be in agriculture. So now they want to expand, what we're listening to with mentioned by President Obama, but more so being mentioned by the forces in Congress, the Senate, mostly the Senate committee, where they now want to open up other industries, service-oriented industries, and other industries that deal with or haven't been touched with guest workers. And what it is basically to us is that the employers now are going to pit one worker against the other and make it difficult for even those that get legalized, because now the employer can simply say, well, I need workers and I need basically cheap labor. That's what it amounts to. And labor that's vulnerable. And when they talk about, at least very little of what we've heard, well, we're going to not oppose it, we're not going to end it, but what we're going to do is fix it to where there's some legal liability on the employers and some safeguards and legal safeguards for workers. But not once have you mentioned the right to organize, the right to demand, higher wages, that nature. But what we have here is we have the real possibility that workers that get legalized will now have to compete with those workers, because employer can very easily say, well, I need workers, whatever wage, minimum wage they want to pay, and not only in this California, we're dealing with the entire country. So the unions are in a real bind, that although they're already lost many members outside of California. California was the only state, as we all know, that was able to organize 400,000 workers. But everywhere else, we've seen the right-to-work states come to be, Michigan, Wisconsin, and other states that are leaning heavily. So unions are, dropping in membership. But when they start playing and forgetting the members and the unorganized sector, and not organizing that level, and instead of, as I always said it, they're being very quiet about, the collaboration that they're having with their corporate agenda, major corporations. And also you have the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. What's their concern? Well, they deal with supposedly small business and major industry, but their interest is basically cheap labor, and they want to expand it. But that's the buy-off by the Obama administration, which is a spineless government ever since he came to office. The question is, what has he done really for labor? What happened to the American Free Choice Act? What happened to this whole question about the American Public Works job? What happened to the issues that affect working people, such as National Labor Relations Act or the North American Free Trade Act. He's been totally leaning towards more and more so corporate America, because corporate America benefits of the free flow of goods. Those are the corporations. You enslave workers lose jobs here. They move those products ready to be assembled through cheap labor and abusive working conditions for those workers, and cheap wages, slave wages. So it's no different than what it's happened with workers losing their jobs or plants moving. And so you have this strong competition,
Well, there have been meetings of the AFL-CIO here in San Francisco, the San Francisco Labor Council, where people in the AFL-CIO are coming to say that we should unite and propose reform and work for a compromise with the Obama administration. What's happening in Sacramento with that, and the pressure they're putting on your group, LULAC, and also why isn't President Obama of the AFL-CIO taking this issue up and challenging this?
Well, I think the deal's been cut, and all this is a big show, because if it were inclusive and democratic, we wouldn't be seeing what we're seeing, the dirty nature of politics from the Central Labor Council in Sacramento. And by that I mean, how is it that you can go to a meeting, it's a town hall meeting, and they bring in John Garamendi, the congressman, who's a public servant, and all of a sudden they send out a leaflet saying, if you want to speak, call this number and they'll give you the talking points. And when I called, they basically said, well, we'd like you to, commit yourself to our talking points, because we're all in unity. Everybody's going to speak on the same line. And I said, well, does that mean that I can't speak? Well, we would encourage you to do so. And there have been other people who outright have been told this. Now, the other thing that's more dangerous was when you have a Central Labor Council who's required to work with all its constituency groups and federated affiliated unions, and they toe the line where there's no democracy, and there's basically what we call punishing people and forcing them to intimidation and coercion. And in light of that, in our case, they go around under the table, so to speak, and go after the very people who provide financial resources for our march, for say the Cesar Chavez March, which is coming up April 6th. And then you have the viciousness of they're having to imply to the people who are our brothers and sisters for the last 12 years that help us with the posters and the leaflets and the banners. And here's this guy who's actually an official of the AFL-CIO and the Labor Council, who underhandedly is going and trying to damage our credibility and also take this money away from us. And then you have the SEIU janitor representative, who's the vice president, who basically is telling us straight out, we're supporting, and everybody fall in line on the Obama push. We're supporting Obama. And I say, it's not about Obama, it's about labor. What about our adopted resolution about what labor stands for as it relates to the just and fair immigration, where now we're seeing this gobbledygook that is so vague, these so-called principles that don't make any sense about the issues that really are affecting people at the grassroots. And this meeting that I came to, although I don't want to identify undocumented people from the community who are the most affected, I'm not undocumented. None of the union officials that get paid as staffers, what have they got to lose? They're paid to do a job, and that union now has committed themselves to the politics of a president who hasn't been friendly to labor at all. In fact, he stabbed us in the back numerous times, and in light of that he made statements about when he was running for president, hey, the day there's a strike or there's a picket line, I'll put on my tennis shoes and I'll go out there and join you. Well, big deal. I mean, he also talked about renegotiating NAFTA. What happened with NAFTA? What happened with, you know, the people from the bottom coming to the table? And then now we have Obama, who's got all these non-profit groups who benefit out of corporations. And one of them happens to be the National Council of La Raza. And they're speaking in Washington, in the first hearings that happened in Washington about immigration reform, and who are they to speak about those issues? They're in conflict of interest. They're getting $200 million a year from corporations and their buddies. So where's their right to be able to speak for the very people who are being impacted? So this is a dog and pony show. The deal's been cut, and everybody's, because we want to support Obama, and he's a Democrat, but he hasn't done anything for labor, and labor's falling right into their camp, and labor's capitulating to the corporate agenda, where these corporations are now putting the unions on hand, when the unions are, you know, going down in a deep dive in a dangerous situation for unions. Instead of the unions taking a position, no way, we're gonna go to the communities, talk to the communities. What do you want? That hasn't happened. We're gonna go to the community and say we're gonna push our own agenda. Hasn't happened. Why? Because it's an orchestrated deal with these union officials that are coming in from the AFL-CIO and Change the Wind member SEIU. Now, do we not live in a democracy? Do we not live in a place where we are inclusive with people that are living in our community, that we claim that we want to be a part of that movement? I don't think so. I think what we have here is a spineless effort when we should be massing with one message, the people's message. Not the message that they're sending that's very vague, the so-called principles. And that's what they're pushing. They're pushing the Obama legislation, the Obama message, and it's not labor's message. Labor's capitulated to basically something's better than nothing. Algo es mejor que nada. And we shouldn't accept that. We should say, listen, this country is responsible for the massive migration with the neoliberal policies that we initiated with NAFTA, that it damaged, you know, even labor here, with labor unions losing members, and the unorganized who have been vulnerable to a cheaper wage to other countries. And in light of that, they're not even talking about the social dynamics in Mexico, about how do we fix your infrastructure or help, you know, as a neighbor. So we, instead of fighting the drug cartels because of drugs, and spending $4.5 billion to kill and murder and assassinate well over 80,000 people in less than 6 years. I mean, not a peep of concern. Those people were workers. Why? Because if they're earning less than $3 a day, and a drug dealer or a drug pusher comes over to them and say, look, you can earn $25, $30, $40, $50 a day. So what do you think they're going to do if they're starving? They're going to say, hell yes, I'll start selling drugs. I can't make it on the 40 cents an hour. There's no way, you know. So those are the issues.
Why hasn't Trumka and the AFL-CIO challenged him on NAFTA? I mean, the effects of NAFTA forcing people to immigrate because of privatization and kicking the people off the land, the ojitos and that kind of thing. You think?
I think Obama takes a great pleasure of saying, hey, if you guys come at me and you embarrass me, I'm going to weaken my position of negotiating. And I'm saying, well, Obama, maybe you didn't learn something, how we got here and what George Bush did. He said, F you, I'm going to do what I want, and I'm in power, and I don't care what you say. You know, I got to give the man credit. He did what he wanted, and he didn't care about Congress, he didn't care about the Senate. Yeah, I would say back then, we could talk about bipartisanship. But Obama is elected with a tremendous mandate in his 4 years and didn't do anything. Okay?
Get ready to close up.
Okay, about 2 minutes?
Okay. So what we have here is labor has capitulated to the corporate agenda, because every one of those politicians received horrendous numbers of money from the corporations in this country.
And why don't you talk about your petition? You're organizing a national petition campaign, and to get people to say that we need a strong program for.
Well, what we've done is that we've always been at the grassroots level. There's a lot of the activism really hasn't come from labor. Labor comes on piggybacks and jumps on board when the groundswell, and a good example of that was 2006. It wasn't the unions that were moving that movement. It was the workers that came out of the woodwork. And they're still there. But there's a semblance of grassroots committees and organizing groups throughout this country who have been left out of the picture. And when they were in Washington, the first hearing, some of our friends in committees, immigrant committees out of Chicago, went over to get a chance to speak against it. Didn't allow them in. They had 3 members who were arrested because they pulled out a sign, "Hey Obama, you want to show good faith, stop the deportations now." Have they talked about anything in good faith? Absolutely not. What they're talking about now is more enforcement. Are they talking about a solution in the big picture of what's happening in some of these countries where the very corporations have basically robbed us from the treasury? They're using workers' money and undocumented workers' money, which are taxes, in order to wallop, working people and people who are here. What's the message? Well, the message is we're going to go along with Obama, and everybody's afraid to embarrass him. It kind of reminds me about the AFL-CIO convention several years ago that we attended in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'll never forget when what's his name, Michael Moore, is going to show this capitalist movie, and we all marched over there, all the people that could fit in that reception hall with Michael Moore. And at one point, one of the leaders, big time leaders back east, asked him a question. Michael, when are you going to call a general strike or a mobilization on Washington? And he said, "Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me?" And he's laughing. He says, "I mean, what about you? I mean, don't you represent 13 million workers? Here we are in October, and I'm going to tell you one thing. If you can't mobilize and go to the convention and submit a resolution and get those leaders to move in to call for a massive march in Washington before Christmas, you can kiss it goodbye because Obama ain't going to do shit." So here we are, going down like a torpedo. And there they are playing bullshit, with people.